I think the best way to start this is from an article that you wrote on changing corporate America in 15 minutes. You have a friend, Jim Braslovsky, is his name?
Yes.
He,
Jim
his,
is my partner. I arrived in the United States in May of 1976
okay.
and met Jim in September of 1976, and we've been partners since then.
Wow.
He's
Well,
the
he had
vice
an,
chair of Henry Schein.
it's interesting that you said that because he has what was the quote? Here it is. We have two ears and one mouth so that we
Yes,
can listen twice as much as we speak.
right. That's Jimmy.
What
And
about,
and also Jimmy reminds us that we can do anything, but not everything. So you've
everything?
got to listen and you've got to focus.
Fantastic. The where this comes into it is there are a number of things about you that I don't know if people know, but was absolutely fascinating to me. You're a very strong proponent of gender equity, which is all the rage right now. But it seems that you have been a proponent of gender equity throughout the course of your stewardship of Henry Schein. It showed up in well, several of the articles address this. Number one was you wrote an article about the three companies that are leading the charge to eliminate COVID through the vaccines, all led by women. All the
The
teams,
companies, the projects,
projects.
the project to bring the vaccine to market. Two companies, women, and somebody also in the U.S. government. I think in the CDC was a woman, is a woman.
Fantastic. And you also referenced during Black History Month, again, I have to find my notes because I want to do this quickly. Ida Green Nelson Rollins and Rebecca Davis Lee Crumpler, the first black dentist, the first black woman, met as doctor, rather. So the reason this made sense is it fits into what you just discussed before. So the first question is, where does this begin for you? What's the crucible? What's the incubator? And
Well,
it is, where do we begin?
right. Well, of course, I'm a big proponent of diversity. I've spent my whole life fighting prejudice in one way or another. But where did my values begin? They began in a little town called Port Elizabeth, which is on the southern shore of Africa, the most southern point of South Africa, almost from a city point of view. There's another point that's a little bit closer south, but there's no big city there and no city. And that's also the area where President Mandela comes from. He comes
Mhm.
from a few hundred miles away. And my parents had a store in a place called South End. South End was a completely and utterly multicultural community. People came from all over the former British Empire and had their businesses, had their professions there, had their centers of learning, schools, synagogues, churches, mosques. Everything was in that area. And towards the last few years of apartheid, this was too much for the government. And they took this area and they shut it down and they moved people into their various communities that they'd set up in a segregated way. I learned a lot from that store because that's where I met people from all over the empire, former empire. A lot of these were, of course, born in South Africa, and I learned a lot that about the importance of diversity and the fact that if you listen to people with different backgrounds and different thought processes, you can, in the end, be a better person.
Obviously, you're a patron of the Metropolitan Opera, and that seems it's consistent with your wife, Marion, and with your children. You really look at fostering the arts and cultural diversity. We'll deal with healthcare in a minute, but that seems to be a very strong foundation in your life. Where does that come from? Where does the interest in opera music and that aspect of creativity come from?
It's a funny question. It's actually an interesting question. There's an interesting and a funny answer. I always grew up in a home of classical music, but when the opera turned on, I used to leave the room. I didn't like it. Then I met Henry Schein. Jimmy and I had to take Henry Schein to the opera during the opera season on Friday nights.
Right.
We had a drive. And, to tell you the truth, I used to probably get Jimmy to take a few more performances than I did because I wasn't such a big fan. And then one day I said to my wife, Marion, there were no CDs at that time. I don't know let's get the tape in advance and listen to it. And you know what? I liked it and opened a whole new world. And
Fantastic.
so we've been active at the Met now for a while, and we use the Met as a place to bring business colleagues together,
Yeah. Right.
uh, people that have an interest in working with Henry Schein, for example, because it's a great place, great atmosphere, and it's a
Yes.
great place to go out of your element. So the opera love came from Henry.
Fantastic. When you went to WITS, it was the business and economics policy. Was that the division that you were in?
Well, no, I became what is called a chartered accountant, which
Oh,
you
the
have in
accountancy.
Canada.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, in the US, we call them CPAs.
Right.
In the British Empire, you call them chartered accountants. So I was a chartered accountant, but I, why did I do that? Because in those days, if your father told you to do something, you did it. It's not the case
Yes,
anymore.
exactly. Not the
So he
same
told me to
anymore.
become a chartered accountant. I didn't like it, but it gave me a very good foundation because today in business, I can analyze a financial statement very quickly
Right.
because I learned the basics. But I was always interested in business, but also I was also interested in finding a way to make a difference in society. And when I met Henry and Esther, I said, wow, this is a couple that have been able to do very well in business, but are doing a terrific job in philanthropy. And their
Right.
son, Jay, was really, really, really a master at finding important causes that aligned with the business. So Jay was one of the founders of what is today known as the generic drug industry in the United States.
Wow.
And he was a big player in bringing to market, getting legislation passed, bringing to market orphan drugs. So orphan drugs are drugs where there's a cure possible, the research is there, but the cost is greater than the economic value,
Right. Right.
but the people that need them. And so I learned from the Schein family that you can combine business, social responsibility, and follow the logic of Ben Franklin, the concept of enlightened self-interest,
Enlighten self-interest.
enlightened self-interest, doing well by doing good. And that's the foundation of Henry Schein. I learned the original, I came up, well, I saw it in my parents' store, and I saw what Henry and Esther and Jay did. And that's the way in which Henry Schein has always been focused. And bottom line is, we're a company that is today known as a company that has a purpose.
Yes. Yes. I'm curious about one thing though. You mentioned the accountancy background, but you are the exemplar for leadership, accountability, responsibility, and setting a corporate culture in place, creating coalitions, helping people collaborate. That leadership, is that innate or does that come from training?
Well, it's a very interesting question. You've got some good questions here today.
Trying my best.
So these are not the normal questions I get asked, but they're very, very important. So if you had to ask me what makes a good leader, I would say to you, somebody that can run a good summer camp. Why? Because a good leader in a summer camp gets everyone involved
Right.
and gets everyone to participate. If they're not the best football player or the best artist or whatever, you figure a way to get everyone involved.
Right.
And that's a leadership trait that I learned from my parents, from the late Jay Schein. There were others that I learned that from, but the whole idea or watched is get everyone engaged, develop the vision, get everyone supportive of the vision, and turn the team loose.
Fantastic. I'm curious though. The one quick question that I do have is there are so many layers in any company. I mean, given the scope, you are the largest provider of healthcare products in the world. How do you keep control? I mean, other than trusting people, but how does the information flow up to you so that you have a very comprehensive picture of what's happening in the company?
Well, it's got to go two highways. One is information,
Right.
and that's a little bit the accountants. Just make sure you get some good accountants. We have one. He's very good. I'll talk about him in a minute.
Sure.
And he gets the information up to us. So that's not the issue. The other part is, how do you make sure that you get a vision, you develop a plan, and you execute on that? And that's about getting people that agree with the philosophy. And the philosophy that has always been important to me and to Henry Schein is a philosophy with a view that the number one asset is the team.
Mm-hmm.
And takes me back to my friend, my mentor, Jay Schein, who would always say, it's all about a concern for people and a concern for results.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to measure the results, but you have to care about people. Number one asset is people. If you authentically care about people, and that is in the DNA of the company, the team will deliver for you every time. No one wants a boss that tells them what to do.
No.
Those days are gone.
Right.
Everyone wants to be involved with a company where there's a purpose, where there's a mission. It's not so difficult being the largest provider of healthcare products to office-based dentists and physicians. There's a purpose. When you're providing products to governments around the world during the vaccine, during the crisis, the COVID crisis, there is a purpose. So once you got the purpose, you got the people aligned behind that purpose, the results will come.
When COVID is over, you basically have a team of people throughout the world who, irrespective of this perception that we're going back to normal, which no longer exists, we're not going back to the normal that we once knew. And it's not an apocalyptic landscape either. However, there have been stressors, work stressors, psychological stressors now brought into play in any company, in any group of people, whether it's their lives, their professional lives. How's Henry Schein planning and providing, psychosocial support for these team members who have endured online business for a year that was brand new to them? The whole structure of the way the company is run this year has changed. Is it going to change going forward? What's Henry Schein's plan to deal with that?
Yeah. So, Ken, our biggest challenge, I think, is not to assume that all is okay. People are, certainly at Henry Schein, are performing, they're working from home. There are people in the distribution centers, in the factories, wearing masks and taking care of the appropriate protocol and going about their job and are delivering for our customers who are on the front line of healthcare. Don't assume that everything's okay, because there's not a person on this planet that is not stressed in one way out of because of this COVID.
Right.
Either we're socially separated, we are helping a family member that's either psychologically challenged right now, economically challenged. So we have to be careful not to read the world at face value. We've got to look, peel the onion and see what's going on in people's minds. We're spending a lot of time on this at Henry Schein. We have always, by the way, had organizational people that worked with us. Mm-hmm. We have a psychiatrist that has been a consultant to Henry Schein for 2 decades. He's not there because we're disturbed. He's there to help us understand what people's needs are.
Yes.
And in my view, the 2 most understated areas in healthcare or underappreciated areas in healthcare are mental health and dentistry. Because there's a view that dentistry is about cosmetics, but we also know that there's a direct correlation between good oral care and good healthcare, and we got to get that across. And people that are spending money on healthcare do not understand that taking care of your teeth will lead to a better life, a longer life, better healthcare, better body, better mental. That's not understood. And there's still a view, unfortunately, that dentistry is about cosmetics and only cosmetics.
No, it's not. The other aspect about dentistry, and I don't want to carry on too long, is dentists themselves are subject to incredible psychological stressors just by virtue of what they're doing.
Absolutely.
The nature of a dentist is, and so the last question is, what's the future? Is digital dentistry, or dentistry forgetting digital, going to change the ability of a dentist to be increasingly more communicative? Are things like e-commerce, AI, telehealth, teledentistry, webinar education from companies, are all of these digital approaches to treatment, to education, to assessment, diagnosis, are we going to be better because of this? Is the company going to be able to work better with the dentist? Is the dentist going to be able to work better with the patient?
Also a good question. We need to ensure that dentists get all the tools that are possibly available at the right price to actually treat their patients. Having said that, I think we have a key role to ensure that the dentists are in touch with others that can help them. Okay. And in that context, we field about 3,000 field sales consultants.
Mm-hmm.
These are people that actually, at the moment, are primarily on Zoom, but in certain countries are already in the field. They've been with us. This is a model we've had for decades. And our job is to make sure that we are talking to the dentist face to face. So, yes, they can buy their products from us on the internet, call us, but we want to be in the practice talking to dentists face to face about their challenges. And the big challenges they face can very often are things that are just not quite understood. Where do they get a receptionist? How do they get somebody to run their computer? How do they make sure that they're in compliance with all the government regulations, which are getting more and more?
Right.
How do they deal with other colleagues on learning? And it's really important that we balance the digital world with the face-to-face world. That's our challenge.
Fantastic. I'm going to ask you one last question. And again, first of all, thank you. I started this out being very nervous because I realized I'm talking to Stanley Bergman. I mean, good Lord, in this lifetime, right? But thank you. You've calmed me down substantially. I do have one last question before we go. You're sort of at the pinnacle of your career. What do you want your legacy to be?
Well, I haven't thought of my legacy per se, but I'm working each day in one way or another to use the tools I've been given, and that includes the Henry Schein platform, to make the world a better place. And to me, some of the big priorities are access to healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
In Canada, it's not as big a challenge as it is in the US, but every single person should be entitled to see a primary care physician, be entitled to see a dentist, and be treated. So to me, that's important. It's important in the US, but it's important in the developing world. And so I'm focused on that personally, and the company is as well. The other area that the company is focused on, and that is ensuring that we are prepared for the next epidemic. And we have some challenges that we know about. There are many things. I mean, there's construction, there's communication. That's not our world. We can't help. But one thing we know is the PP&E supply chain doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
We can build all the factories we want in Canada or the US. When the economy turns to normal, people will not buy there because the cost of production is too high. So we need to work on a global basis to make sure that the PP&E supply chain works, and we have to make sure that we give PP&E to people in poorer countries as well,
right.
Because epidemics, infections don't carry passports. The whole world needs to be taken care of. It's the moral right thing, but it's in the interest of our self-preservation that the whole world has access to PP&E. We need to make sure that tests are available to everyone in the world. And then the vaccine. It's not good enough to give the vaccine just to people in the wealthy countries. Mm. So these are the areas that we're working on. And they're all part of providing access to everyone, access to care to everyone. And that's what we're working on at Henry Schein. The good news is the company's supportive of that concept.
Mr. Stanley, I find it hard to call you Stanley. Thank you for this. Honestly, thank you for this. It's just a delight. Thank you so much for the privilege.
I'm glad we were able to speak about things beyond business. So thank you.
Absolutely. You have a wonderful day.
Good luck with your program. It's a good program.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you.